For the people that are online, please feel free to add any questions using the Q&A function, and I will ask any that come through. But in the meantime, I'll sort of do a little bit of an introduction to myself and the panel and why we're here today. So my name's Dunya. I'm the head of policy and public affairs at Multiverse, where we are hosted today. Today we're really looking forward to speaking about AI, work, the future of work, and the future of jobs with the AI sector. Last night, the Prime Minister closed off the AI Summit with a live interview with Elon Musk. Elon Musk did get my message, and he did ask the Prime Minister a question and told him that AI will make jobs obsolete. So I'm glad that he did that to make this event relevant for us. I appreciated it. The Prime Minister didn't. He did laugh a bit nervously about it, but I'm interested to hear what our panelists think about that, because we know what the Prime Minister and Elon Musk think about it. What they did say is that, or what Elon Musk said is that AI would sort of do all the jobs and humans would be co-pilots and work would be obsolete, but that's a fairly controversial opinion. So like I said, I'm looking forward to hearing what our panelists have to say about that. In the real world, outside of the Prime Minister and Elon Musk, two billionaires having a laugh, businesses are grappling with the question around how they prepare the workforce for an AI future, and whether or not they need to slow down hiring or whether they need to get more experts in-house. So there's a lot of questions that we're dealing with. Individuals also have a lot of questions. How can they use AI to make themselves more efficient? How can they use AI to make the processes that they work with more efficient? And whether or not that their jobs are going to continue to be relevant in the same way that they have been for the last 5 to 10 years. So it's an interesting time that we're living through. So is AI coming for our jobs, or will it empower us to do our jobs better? Should we be preparing, and how should we be preparing? And can we use this as an opportunity to reshape who gets access to the best opportunities? To answer some of these questions, we've assembled this expert panel, which I will introduce. So firstly, we've got David Moore, who's the Digital and Emerging Technologies at Balfour Beatty. David is an experienced technology leader who has worked with FTSE 250 clients, including Brother, Cadbury, and public bodies such as the NHS. And we've got Katie Amison, who's a data analytics apprentice at Fujitsu. Katie is an AI enthusiast, producing AI blogs for our community of apprentices. She recently took the stage at CogX Festival, interviewing best-selling author of Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari. Then we've got Ujjwal Singh, who's the Chief Product and Technology Officer from Multiverse. Before joining Multiverse, Ujjwal led the development of Facebook's suite of workplace tools and has driven innovation at Google and GoFundMe. And lastly, we've got Bola Adesina, who is the Future of Work and DEI advisor. Bola is a seasoned technologist, ex-global DEI partner, with a career spanning over 20 years as in public and private sectors. In the last few years, Bola has combined her tech and DEI expertise to help shape the future of the workplace through tech and inclusive culture lenses. So like I said, very pleased to have this expert panel with us. So I'll just start off with an easy question. We've heard about the potential for AI to augment humans. I was wondering if you could share some examples of that. How is AI increasing the capacity in your own line of work and in your organizations? Let's start with David.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is fun. I think that there's two parts to that, right? So there's me personally. I'm spending a lot of time with people who haven't used generative AI tools before, and it's been interesting seeing the difference between, experienced people, if you like, who've been at it for a year, and those that haven't. For me, there's a big focus just now on trying to coach people, try to encourage people how to get the best out of the tools that are there. I think inside Balfour's, there's a big focus on prepping the workforce, if you like. We're doing a lot of tests with time groups of users, if you like, and also planning career pathways as well. So trying to think through where it is going to impact roles and where it is going to impact individuals. Like, how do we manage that? How do we support them? And how do we make sure that we retain people inside Balfour?
Katie?
Okay, so I'd say in my day-to-day I don't particularly work with AI that much, but I recognise as a data analyst that it's going to become very prominent in my near future. As for obviously working for Fujitsu, I know that we work a lot, particularly with our customers, on the AI services that we offer and things like that, and there's a lot of sort of trialing and testing going on behind the scenes there. But yeah, so far it's very much a learning process for me.
Okay, so is this on?
Yeah.
Great. So for me, I think it's actually like threefold. So one, it's day-to-day work. So both personal work as well as my teams, how are developers more productive with AI? How are people who are generating content using AI in a safe way? That's sort of one bucket of work where I think AI actually has had some impact in terms of efficiency. The second one is we have folks like our coaches that are providing a service to our apprentices. How do they get augmented, if you want to use the word augmented? Like how do they offer that service in a much more effective way? And then I think there's a third one, which is how does AI actually help our end users, our apprentices, actually be more effective in like picking up skills, learning, applying those skills? And I think across all three, even in just the last 3 to 6 months, we've made a ton of progress. And like just the future is wide open for where we can go with that. Like at the rate things are changing in AI. But that's sort of how I think about augmentation with AI, at least in the multiverse context.
Bola?
Thanks. It's interesting hearing the applications that you're already applying AI in your organizations. I think for an industry that is highly regulated, like ours, to be honest, a lot of people are still scratching their head, even having the conversation that we know about AI. Thanks to ChatGPT, the awareness is there, everyone knows about it. And I think we are aware of the opportunities, the massive opportunities that the augmentation between AI and human intelligence would have on the business. But the conversation now is actually, even before experimenting, what is the what, what is the why, the how, the when, what do we want to use this thing for? What is this thing? What is AI? What are the implications? What are the risks? And so on and so forth. So a lot of companies are starting within that industry. I was at a wealth management global summit earlier this week, and it's the same conversation. Actually, people are starting to have the conversation around how can we start to look at or talk about AI strategy. What frameworks do we need? What governance do we need to be able to ensure that we use it effectively and it doesn't fall into the wrong hands and we don't have data breaches as a result of using AI and so on and so forth. So I think in my case, personally, I use ChatGPT. So sometimes when I have a question, I will just ask it some question and it pour out all these responses. I'm like, oh, actually not bad. But I don't know whether you're aware on social media. I was on social media a few months ago, and apparently someone had gone on ChatGPT and asked the question, oh, can you tell a joke about Prophet Muhammad? And I'm like, no, I can't. No, it's not allowed. I can't do it. Can you tell a joke about Jesus Christ? I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a few jokes, and it came up with a few jokes. And obviously Christians were not happy about that, right? And everyone started going on ChatGPT, and no, this can't be right. We have to ask the same question. And eventually, he kind of learned, and they said, no, I'm not telling any jokes. And it just tells you where AI is, and to now have a tool like that in a highly regulated environment, you can just see the implications. So that's where we are, I think, before even we start to experiment, to try and understand what is this thing called AI.
Absolutely, that's really interesting. Thank you. And just a reminder to our online listeners, please send in your questions via Zoom if you have any, as I'll be picking on you in the end. But I just wanted to sort of move on a little bit in terms of preparing for an AI transformation, and you all touched on that a little bit in terms of how you're currently working and what you're hoping to work on in the future. We're in the midst of a huge wave of what is the start of AI, and we've been continuously told that this is just the beginning. I wanted to ask a few of you questions on some of the work that you're doing and some of the more personal work that you're working on. So David, I wanted to ask, what should CEOs and business leaders be prioritizing right now?
Again, I think there's multiple answers to that. There's definite opportunities of productivity, obviously. That's one of our big focuses. There's particular use cases for us in our industry that we're pursuing around risk management, bid management, all sorts of stuff. I think, I mean, you made an interesting point. Public environments are problematic. I think putting generative AI on guardrails, putting it in secure environments so you're not handing over information through public tools, that's a big focus for us. And also, like I said earlier, preparing the workforce. You've got to figure out what does your organization look like based on the technology that's available today, and then based on the what we think is coming, bearing in mind that it's moving so quickly.
Absolutely. And Ujjwal, so similar question for you. As a leader, how are you preparing for it in the workplace, and how are you looking to shape your workforce in the years to come?
Yeah, so going on David's point about safety, one of the first things we did at Multiverse is wrap the OpenAI API around a tool that we can control and see how people are using it. And it's not just safety, it also gives you really great insight in where it's actually useful and where it's not. So you start to learn very quickly these use cases, this kind of tool actually helps versus it doesn't. So I think that's the safety and that measurement piece of, is it really, there's a lot of hype. So you got to get past that hype of is this actually helpful or not? And so that's one. The second one is, I was recently at a conference that the Microsoft CEO got up and said, oh, we've rolled out GitHub Copilot to every single developer in our organization, and we're seeing 30 to 50% improvement. And I think if you think about just that scope of that, how many developers Microsoft has, the level of development that they already do, and you're bumping that up by 30 to 50%, I think there's something really interesting to be learned about how do you apply AI in very specific scenarios to get the most gain. But again, today I feel like the AI everywhere is likely not the right answer because of safety, because of is it actually relevant? But if you start to, so this is one I spend a lot of time thinking about, which is where is where you surgically put AI in to get the most value. Yeah. So I would say that's sort of how I think about at least AI in the current role I'm in.
It's really interesting. And then Bola, I think you mentioned this a little bit before, and I can see you want to touch on what Ujjwal says, but I also wanted to ask, after you touch on what Ujjwal says, is what, in your opinion, should society, government, and policymakers be doing to prepare us for the coming AI transformation?
Touching on what you said as well, I think, I think for us and for the future of work, and to be honest, people go, what's the definition of the future of work? And the way I explain it to people is we cannot, it's almost like it's impossible to go back to pre-pandemic workplace. That's gone, it's gone. We need to shape what the future should look like in that hybrid setting. I mean, a lot of people go into the office maybe 2-3 times a week in the city nowadays, maybe 4 at a stretch. And what a lot of companies are doing, and especially us are doing, is actually, as we look at the future of work and we refurbish our floors in our buildings, why don't we make it so attractive that people want to come in rather than force them to come in? Because people's circumstances have changed, right? After the pandemic. And for us, it's not just the refurbishment, is what we use spaces for. And in order to be able to do that, we need the technology to be able to power that future of work. So from someone making the intention to actually come into the office to when they leave the office, do we have the technology right now? Today, there isn't a technology in the market. Maybe one in the UK. So I was leading the Future of Work program. I went back to market and benchmarked the technology out there. Microsoft was one of them. Very early development phase with Microsoft Places. I don't know whether you're aware. But there's a company in the UK that has the capabilities that we want from that system. And basically what we're thinking of, we have this building in Cardiff that's got 8 floors. Is there a way that we can actually stack the floors as people are booking to actually stack the floors, so start from ground 0 to 1 to 2, and then open new floors, floor by floor. So for example, on a Monday and Friday, that people don't come into the office, maybe we only have 3 floors occupied and have 5 floors free. and then we can measure maybe reduction on carbon emissions and so on and so forth, and feed that into our annual sustainability reports. When I went out to market, there isn't a technology provider that has that solution right now. And the one company that kind of seems like they have it, they heavily utilize AI, which you would expect. So they would have to run data, they would have to kind of like use their models to learn how people come into the office, the patterns and so on and so forth, to measure workplace occupancy and optimization and so on and so forth. But the problem and the issue is, as David has said, how do you bring that into the workplace when you have security departments that will look at it and go, oof, that is too much right now, or we don't understand the extent to which that AI in the system will work for us. So there's a lot of that around how we're looking at AI. And to your question about governments and policymakers, it's like with everything else, right? I remember when the AI started, no one understood what it was, but people had an understanding somehow. But there were no training, no official, you couldn't go on a course to a uni and study the NI, right? AI is kind of like, it's new. It needs the same guardrails and ensuring that policymakers and stakeholders are all on board and aligned in what we want to use it for, how do we want to use it, and so on and so forth. The good news is, I was at a conference, there's actually an European body that looks at AI standards, so something is coming. We know that there's some sort of policy coming. And what that would look like, we don't know, but there's something that would be able to put guardrails in how we should use AI. Because think about it, inherently it's risky, right? And as human beings, we're all biased in the way we see things, in the way we view the world. When you're looking at AI, when you're looking to apply AI, if you're a global company, are you going to look at applying AI through a Western lens or a global lens? Is the application of AI in the UK the same as in China, the same as in APAC, EMEA, and all of this stuff? So you have to, there's a lot to think about, and that comes with the standards, the governance structure, what that should look like internally, across board, the ecosystems that we need to create. And it's a great thing that the UK government is starting to have those conversations, right? So yeah, for me, I think those are the main things around it.
That's super interesting, thank you. And Katie, last but not least, what should individual workers and young people be doing to prepare for this upcoming AI wave?
I think from a young person's perspective, I think trying to guess the future and guess the kind of skills you need to have for the future is quite difficult and quite terrifying, to be honest. And from my personal experience, I think the one thing that you aren't gonna fall short of is soft skills. So communication, time management, problem solving, things like that. That's something that, okay, maybe problem solving, but machines can't do that. Like you can teach it so much, but communication particularly is such a skill that has carried me personally through to my career and things like that. So I think that that's something that's not going to be replaced by AI. And it's something that isn't going to be overtaken by anything that we can't predict in the future.
Do you think that your schooling so far would have prepared you for that? Or do you think that there's some work that needs to be done to get more young people aware of those soft skills that they might need in the future?
Yeah, I don't really think, personally, my school experience taught me that soft skills were necessary. I think that there are sort of underlying aspects of education and school and the way it's set out that teach you those kind of skills, like time management. If you're late, you get into trouble and things like that. But I think a lot of the soft skills I developed, particularly communication, actually came from getting a part-time job at the age of 15, learning what worked, what led me to stand out amongst other people and things like that. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be done in education in terms of soft skills.
Sounds really interesting. Sounds like applied learning. But in terms of the role of training and reskilling and actually getting up to speed, I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of training and reskilling with the concept of AI in mind. So I'll start with Ujjwal. What's Multiverse doing in this space to prepare people for the coming wave of AI?
Yeah, so you talked about applied learning. I'm going to use an example here, which I think is like illustrative. There was a recent coding hackathon in Silicon Valley. I follow some of these. And what was really interesting about it, and they've been doing it for like 20 years, this was the first time a non-software engineer won the challenge. It was a marketing person that won the challenge. And I think that really highlights like what AI actually makes possible. Like, and that comes from this notion of I can now unlock my potential to do things in a way that wasn't possible before. Like this person likely didn't go get a CS degree, didn't yet was able to show up and win this coding hackathon. And I think that's magical, and that's really what Multiverse like exists to do, unlock that potential. And I think it's that now if you apply AI to Multiverse, that the way I think this goes back to what you were saying about like for young people, it's this like the ability to say, I'm going to continuously learn. Like it's not I'm going to be a marketing person or I'm going to, and I think that's the fundamental change that AI is doing. It's less about like putting boxes around your roles, and it's more about how do I continuously learn? How do I train on the job to get into the next role, unlock like what my inner creativity and like, you know, I want to become a marketing person. I'd be a terrible marketing person with or without AI, but like it's so. But it's that ability that Multiverse, the platform, enables, and it's like giving tools, AI tools, to individuals to help them do that on a continuous level. Like it's not just about I came in and did one apprenticeship, but it's I'm in my job. I have this AI tool from a career coach, if you will, from Multiverse that's like continuously upskilling me, continuously suggesting things to make me better at the job or get my next job or show progression. So I think that's what I find magical about what like AI will enable.
And Bola, how do you think training and reskilling will fit into the future of work in an AI world?
Absolutely, and it's quite crucial in the future of work. When you think about the future of work, you're thinking about the future in terms of people, in terms of tech, in terms of processes. And in terms of people, I think a lot of organizations know that we don't really have the right skills right now. Let's say we press the button and AI is now using every organization. I think a lot of organizations will be behind because the skill set is not there. Is the skill set there in society maybe? Do we have enough data scientists? Do we have enough people that can actually use and utilize and exploit AI properly? I don't know. I don't think so. But I think a lot of organizations, the realization is there that they need to upskill the workforce. Otherwise, we can't move into the future, right? So for productivity, in terms of collaboration, in terms of actually bringing people together and connectivity, how do we actually do that in a safe space? I remember over, I don't know how many years, maybe 5, 6 years, we actually train the workforce, whoever you opt in if you want to, on Python. So with AI, are we going to do something similar so that people can actually, upskill that way? Maybe during lunch times, people can log in and do something on AI or do like a hackathon or something. So I think, the opportunity is there, and I think it is something that a lot of organizations are scrambling to get there. Because think about it, if Gen Z, millennials, I was speaking to Katie earlier and saying actually, once you want to get into the workforce, is the workforce actually prepared and ready for you? So you have the AI, you have the language, you have the know-how, but once you get into the organizations, are the organizations actually prepared, to allow you to exploit and explore whatever you need to do with AI? So absolutely.
Definitely. Katie, it'd be interesting to hear your experience of being an apprentice on a Multiverse program and what you've been learning and how you've been able to apply that to your role.
I could talk about Multiverse for hours, to be honest.
Perfect place.
Yeah, well, where do I begin? I suppose the actual educational aspect of Multiverse, obviously, I'm getting paid to get a degree, first and foremost, that's incredible. And what I really like is that you can kind of learn it your own way. So, there's a lot of reading before your workshops, but then you have interactive workshops that are online, things like that. And there's recordings, and there's like everything on the community hub, and things like that. So in terms of learning, I think that it's probably been the smoothest educational process I've ever had, because it doesn't try and put you in a box. I've never really found education to be my thing. Knew I didn't want to go to university. I knew it was never going to be for me. And this experience has allowed me to prioritize education, but not feel like I have to learn in a particular way or be a certain way or anything like that. So I'm really grateful for my experience with Multiverse in that sense. But in terms of just being a member of the community, obviously I'm quite involved in the community, and it's given me lots of opportunities. For example, this. As you mentioned earlier, I was fortunate enough to go down to the CogX Festival and meet some really incredible people, and that's just thanks to the fact that I get involved and I really make the most of this experience. I write blogs, I host socials and things like that, and Multiverse really has a lot to offer when you get digging. Just reading other people's blogs is so eye-opening, getting in touch with other apprentices and things like that. So this isn't just a university experience for me, this is like career changing really, because I'm not just learning how to become a data analyst or how to be a data analyst at Fujitsu. I'm learning soft skills, fundamental skills, communication skills, public speaking, things like that, building a brand. So yeah, my experience with Multiverse is fantastic.
That's great. We didn't pay her to say that. This is organic. And David, for big listed companies like Balfour, Beatty, how do you get people on board with digital transformation and the need to reskill and upskill in your organization?
Carefully. So it's a large part of my life just now is trying to convince people that we need to prep. We do need to prep. It's difficult to know where to start. We're doing a lot of stuff internally, so we've got buy-in to do a whole series of training series. How to talk to AI, it's my favourite one. I hate the term prompt engineering, right? I really do. It makes kittens die when people say it. You're not engineering it, it's great, you're talking. When you're typing in whatever language is your preference. But yeah, how to talk to AI. How do we prep people to be able to interact with these tools? I had like a proper road to Damascus moment, like personally recently, where lots of people in our organisation start to use these tools. I spend a lot of time with them, and you realise my experience with them is very different to theirs, because I've spent a year of my life talking to these. I've embedded it in my life. It's been a huge personal benefit to me as well, and to the people around me who've got to listen to me bang on about them, including you all, hopefully. But I think that coaching and training piece is really important. Making sure that you've got organisational buy-in as well. I spend a lot of my life now talking to execs. I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, you said of it, you couldn't be a marketing comms person. I couldn't do what I'm doing without the aid of these tools. It's personally, it's helped me communicate better with senior leaders and all that. Trying to figure out how to navigate an argument and kind of make a case. They're crazy powerful in that respect. And really, for us, it's about trying to impart that understanding. Go after targeted use case, but also kind of enable people to get productivity enhancements, improvements, and just kind of get better quality outputs, from whatever it is that they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
So it sounds like you use ChatGPT to convince your senior to construct the arguments.
You may laugh. I didn't use ChatGPT. I used Llama V2 on my personal machine. But jokes aside, right? I know it's quite a meta thing to do, but the tools are crazy powerful in lots of respects. Everyone uses them in different ways. And I think, again, that just kind of encouraging people to experiment, encouraging people to share best practice, like what works for you. It's high value stuff.
Very interesting. And yeah, just another reminder to put your questions into the chat, as we've got one last section before I move on to questions from the audience. So with AI and the transformation of work and the future of work, it sounds as though there's an opportunity to create a new cohort of leaders, and there's an opportunity for a lot of people to get stuck into this area because of a variety of things, of what Ujjwal was saying about the marketing professional who won the hackathon, or young people getting into apprenticeships. So I'd like to touch on that about DEI, the future of what kind of people will be leading this AI revolution. Bola, I'd like to start with you, if that's all right. In the past, tech leaders have come from a very small subsection of society, very concentrated in Silicon Valley, very typically middle upper class white men. How do we make sure the same thing doesn't happen again with AI?
Yeah, it's an interesting question and an interesting ethical one. And to be honest, the area that I'm really interested in is ethics. How are we, as society, as global citizens, are we willing to actually change, fundamentally, or are we just going to make the same mistake again? Are we going to have pockets of marginalized groups who are further going to be disadvantaged as a result of AI? We know globally there's a big digital divide, right? Between, depending on where you are and who you're talking to. Now layer AI on that, it's even going to be a bigger divide. So how can we stop that? But if we bring it back into the workplace, what does that mean? So I've always thought, actually, we're talking about AI, we're talking about standards, we're talking about guardrails, controls, and so on and so forth. So how would that work? So for example, in my company, we've got about 8 or 10 employee resource groups, so from LGBT to physical disability. So when we're talking about AI and when we're talking about formulating products and solutions, would we have representatives of those employee resource groups to make it an inclusive and diverse group so that there's less bias going into whatever solution that we're making? How would it work in practice? Even for me, I can't get my head around it, but it would be a good place to start, right? So that whatever we do, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's HR transformation, whatever transformation it is within the organization, is done through an inclusion lens, so that increasingly we lower the barriers to marginalized groups in terms of the solutions that we're creating. I don't know how the big technology companies are doing this. Do you have developers from one of those groups, someone with physical disability, neurodiversity, and so on and so forth, women, men, and bisexual and gay and lesbian? How do you do that? And I think we need to, for me, that's the critical aspect, apart from the controls and the guardrails, is what is going into. I'll give you an example. I was applying to renew my son's UK passport. And the photo, when you upload the photo, I think there's AI behind it. There has to be, because it kept rejecting whatever photo that I put on there. And in the end, I sent all the 4 photographs that I took of him, and I sent it and I said, you have to choose one of these. That's his skin tone. I know you're complaining about shadow, but that's his skin tone. That tells you that we don't have enough data to start to talk about even creating applications or solutions on AI. And if we don't have that, should we step back and go through actually what data do we need to put in this thing for us to be able to reduce that bias? So I think in the workplace, same thing. What would we need to do internally to ensure that when whatever product, whatever solution that we put in is inclusive? So it's the question more than solution. Sorry.
That's really interesting, because it sounds like we might need to learn how to walk before we start jumping up and down, especially when it comes to exactly what the example that you gave around making sure that some of the technologies that exist today are sort of rid of as much bias as possible before we start inventing new technologies that may exacerbate that bias. David, in terms of working for a large organization and some of the types of people that you hire, who do you think will benefit the most from AI, and who do you think will be sort of put at risk from AI in terms of some of the conversations we're having?
Difficult question to answer, isn't it? No, it's all right. It's totally fair. I mean, like, I think that individuals are probably the people who are going to benefit the most, right? I loved your story about the hackathon. The winner was someone who wasn't at the building. Like, that's kind of amazing. We see this at work a lot just now, where individuals who don't have technical skills, with coaching on how to get the best out of the generative AI tools, can perform really complex technical. Potentially everyone is a data scientist now, with the right coaching and guidance on how to use the tools. There's a huge kind of leveling, I think, of skills that's happening and is going to become more and more obvious as these tools land in big businesses and are deployed. I think, weirdly, that the people who are probably going to be worst off are people who are currently in IT functions. One of the biggest impact that we're seeing is in that space. And that's quite difficult for technology people to navigate. I know that these tools can do 30-40% of my job, probably better than I do. That's part of the reason why I'm here, right? I'm leading into the talking and writing and, like you were saying, blogging and all that kind of stuff, because I work on the basics. There will be room for people to talk about the tech, even if we end up in a place where it's, where it's only machines that are listening to. But, there's huge opportunity for individuals to upskill, learn new things, apply themselves in different ways. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that everything's going to work out okay.
Great. We love optimism. Katie, you started your career at 19 with no background in tech or coding. How did you get to where you are today, and how might you encourage other people who might not have had a similar background into working in tech?
So for a bit more context, I sat my A-levels last year, and I sat exams for French, English literature and sociology. I came out with CDE. I'm now working at Fujitsu as a data analytics degree apprentice. So I think that says enough, really. I think it kind of agrees with everything we've said so far, that, you don't really have to be the most technical person to do these kinds of jobs. And it goes with exactly what you just said. And that's why I'm sat here today, because I started my apprenticeship just over a year ago, and I realised very quickly that it probably is going to do its own job at some point. And soft skills, communicating, being able to speak in front of a crowd, being able to articulate things that I've learnt and my opinions and things like that in certain ways is far more valuable than what I started off thinking I was going to do. The question, oh gosh, I've lost the question now.
So how did you get to where you are today, and how would you encourage other people to go down the same route as you?
Yeah, so I scream and shout about apprenticeships, to be honest. I think it's very career dependent, obviously. Degrees and university is great for some things. But I'm really, really grateful for my experience as an apprentice. The way I got here, I would say mostly life experience. I'm going to be honest. I think life experience has shaped me to become the individual I am today. And it's led me to be, 20 years old, sat here talking to a group of people, sat at the O2 Arena a few weeks ago, speaking in front of a crowd of people. That's quite a big thing, I'd say. And school didn't teach me that. And I don't know. Communication is the biggest thing, and it's the most cliche thing ever. Communication is key, but it is probably what got me to where I am. I started my interview with my manager from Fujitsu, May 21, I think, and said, I think your company's really great. Don't know anything technical, never have, never had an interest in it. These are the A-levels I'm doing. I'm not really predicted to pass, to be honest. But take me on board and we'll see what we can do. And he must have seen something in me, so here I am. It's more about that, I think. Again, I've said it a million times now, it's more about the soft skills. I sat there and said I really enjoy problem solving. I worked part-time at Morrison's, and the biggest problems I was solving was trying to get like waste to fit in a cage. But I loved it. And that was my problem solving that I sat there in that interview and told and was like, yeah, I love problem solving, but I do. And that was the problems that I was solving. So yeah, again, communication and just overall soft skills, they are what are going to carry you through your career.
Great. I want to ask if you're a Gemini because I just hear a lot of these things about communication and it's just raises other things. And Ujjwal, I wanted to ask about how apprenticeships, I know Katie's just given a ringing endorsement of apprenticeships, but more broadly, as an individual who might be going through their career, how do apprenticeships fit in to ensuring that there's greater diversity in the tech sector or any sector?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, and Katie hinted at this with the university and the current educational system. I think there's a lot of data around it's not very equitable. There's also a lot of data around it's actually not changing with the times fast enough. I was in a conversation with the head of department of the CS department at the top school, I would argue, for CS at Stanford. And I was explaining Multiverse, and he was like, oh, I think we could use Multiverse at Stanford. I was like, huh, tell me more. Why do you think that? Because that's not sort of our audience that we're going after, obviously. And he made this really important point, which is that schools and universities, the curriculums aren't changing fast enough. That they're not teaching the skills. And we at Multiverse talk about knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Universities aren't teaching knowledge, skills, and behaviors. By the way, behaviors being a lot of the soft skills that you keep talking about, which is, I think, really important. And what Multiverse is trying to do is like unlock potential in an equitable way for individuals, for corporations and organizations. And I think AI just supercharges that. Again, that example of a marketing person winning a coding challenge in the Valley. I think that's a remarkable thing that, if you just stop and think about where we've come from and where we are, it's incredible. And the other thing I do think about in terms of apprenticeships is this analogy. I use the mobile analogy a lot, and I think it does apply with AI. Mobile went through these phases. We had phones. They weren't very capable. They had some features. They were cool. And people used them. They, SMS, text, or voice, and all of those kinds of things. Then we added simple games. Then people said, oh, well, I have a website. I'm going to add I'll add mobile to my website. And that was sort of phase 2. And then you had this third wave. I would put Uber and Airbnb in that wave, which was mobile only. And that unlocked opportunity for lots of people. It not only solved the problem, but it unlocked opportunity. And I think we are in that same way with AI. A lot of people are we went through the toy phase of AI. And we're still, I would argue, a little bit in the toy phase of AI. Then there's the second phase, which is let me add AI to blah. And this is what Microsoft's announcement yesterday, if you guys heard that, which they're basically adding Copilot to every single Microsoft tool out there. And that's the second phase, which is let's add AI to it. The third phase is where I think companies are starting to think about, companies like Multiverse are starting to think about, which is what does AI first actually mean in terms of the service we're offering? What does it mean to say, you have access, you could be anything you want, you're only limited by your ability and aspirations. And I think that's the real unlock for AI. And I happen to be a techno-optimist, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be in this role. But I think that's what's most exciting about where we are headed. And will there be jobs that are lost? Probably. Will there be new jobs created? Most definitely. Will people step up and do things that they've never been able to do before? Absolutely. And I think that's where things like apprenticeships powered by an AI coach or something like that is going to be super powerful.
Really interesting. Thank you. We've got a few questions coming in from our online listeners. So I will start off with one of them, and then I'll come to the room to ask if anyone has a question in the room. So we have a question from Hafiz. If AI is integrated into majority of organizations over time, is there a risk of complete reliance and dependence on AI? And what possible measures could be introduced to help reduce this?
Right. I really worry about that. I really genuinely do. At the moment, whenever I'm talking to people about this stuff, I always make the point that today, these tools are at their best when they're steered by experts, right? So you put you put GitHub Copilot in the hands of an experienced developer and they'll work magic, right? Huge output improver. And I worry that there will come a point where we don't have senior developers anymore, where the current guard, if you like, are gone. And the people that are going through the process just now will potentially, I think there's a real risk of over-reliance on these tools and being led by generative AI tools rather than leading them. And that applies in all sorts of areas. So like in our business, our bids are really complicated, right? So if you imagine you're building for a mega project, like a huge piece of work, it's going to be priced, costly, etc. Those processes are really, really complex. We rely heavily on people experience. One of the things that we're doing is training a bids AI, although I've just said that out loud and I don't think I'm supposed to have told anyone that we're working on that, but we are. To your point earlier about narrow use cases, pursuing, particular areas of high value tools and kind of bolting large language models onto the site where it makes sense, do predictive analytics where it makes sense, all that stuff. But when I look at our roadmap, I worry about the potential impact of the tools that we're putting in place. Fundamentally optimistic though, right? But like maybe one day a week, I'm I worry about the impact these things have had.
Anybody else? Yeah, Bola?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think, are there opportunities, massive opportunities? I think so. Are people likely to lose their jobs or roles? Are roles going to be disappear, so to speak? Yes, but that's always been in technology. The tools, I've been in technology for over 20 years. The tools that I started off with in those days by Oracle, right? They don't exist anymore. And for me, the transition that I've made in technology is been me actually saying, almost like saying that is going to happen in 3 years' time, so I need to get out. I need to pivot. As long as you can pivot, as long as you've got the skills to allow you to continuous learning to pivot, I think you'll be fine. It's always in technology. Technology is a tool. It's just a tool. It's either it's there or it's not. And with time, AI is not going to be a thing. It's going to be something else, right? In maybe 20 years' time, we won't be talking about AI. We'll be talking about whatever it is. And that's why it's important, the AI and the human intelligence, that augmentation is important. Because as long as you have a tool and you can use another tool and switch to another tool, you'll be fine. And you always find the role. So I don't think, for me, I know people will be worried about their roles and their jobs, but I think it will move people up. So rather than doing the same mundane things over and over and over again, and the pain of doing that maybe on a monthly basis at certain dates or days in a month, you find that you now have something, an AI product that can help you, or maybe you start to think, actually, I can do more with this AI tool and actually do another role or go into another role. So I think there are loads of opportunities there, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, in 20 years we won't be talking about AI. We'll be talking about what our robot overlords let us talk about. Okay.
Try to find a clean water.
Yeah, we'll be optimistic. We're optimistic. Are there any questions in the room? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm a software engineering apprentice. I'm a year into my career. My question is, so obviously I come from a certain background and also a person of color. How do I, as a software engineering apprentice, compete with people with CS degrees, the top jobs at like FANG or certain companies after my apprenticeship? And how can I use AI to make myself stand out in what is kind of like a rough tech market right now? Not many people getting jobs. So what would you say?
For just to repeat the question for the people online, is that we had a question about a software engineering apprentice who's a year into their role, who was asking how they would compete in a rough tech market with individuals with computer science degrees.
Yeah, I'll take that, and I'm sure other panelists might have something to say too. But the way I would frame that question isn't you are in competition with someone who has a CS degree. I would frame it slightly differently, which is what are things that you can do with the tools that are available now in non-traditional ways that a traditionally trained computer scientist would do differently? And could you do that more efficiently in a much faster way? could you unlock your creativity using those tools that those more traditional folks aren't. So it's less about trying to say I compete on a degree or I compete on a qualification. It's you compete on like what you can accomplish. This is that whole applied learning piece of this, is you show real value of the work you're doing as an apprentice. And that applies in every aspect of whatever you end up doing, like or whatever next job you end up doing. One thing I'll say, like if you look at FANG, they are desperate to hire like young folks coming in, whether they have a traditional CS degree or not, because they know they can make them productive with the tools that are available, with all the technology now that exists. So that the equation, the balance has shifted. It isn't about what degree you get. Like, one of the things, like when I was at Google, we did this study. At Google, when you interview, they take out your education completely. You don't look at like the resume that you get. You don't, for a software engineer, you don't see where they've come from. You only see their work.
CVs.
It's like actually makes a difference. So I think that the mind shift has to happen, which is like, it's not the degree and the qualification, it's what I've done, what I do 6 months ago and what impact did it have. That becomes the most valuable thing. And that's where like apprenticeships are really valuable. That's where AI tools are really valuable. Embracing that change and like showing value of that is, I think, the critical point around how do you like advance and progress in your career, regardless of software engineering or whatever. It's true everywhere, I think.
Can I chip in? I'm very conscious I'm the 40 minute past me all the time. So I started to code when I was 7, right? I learned BASIC on an Atari. That officially makes me old, saying that out loud, I think. I went to university and I dropped out. I was there for 1.5 years. I did computer science. I hated it. Me and university did not get along. But then later, I continued to work, right? And I realized that what people are really looking for, and what I was looking for is head of data and software development, which was my previous role at Balfour. We built out software teams. We have an apprenticeship program, so there's a load of like 16, 17-year-old kids who worked for me until about 10 weeks ago when I got my new job title, which I made up, by the way. Okay. What I look for, and what people that I know in similar positions in other organizations look for, is a type of person. I'm always interested in, to your point, what have people done? Like, what are you interested in? Are you engaging in your interview? Are you clearly excited about the technology that you're using? Do you like building things? Do you like solving problems? The rest of it you can learn. Like the language that you're coding in, nobody cares. I recruited a C# developer into a Python role, because with the tools now, it's fine. It's easy to navigate. It's like, as long as you've got the mentality of a developer, that makes sense. So you're not in competition with people who have degrees. You're really not. I don't have an education section on my CV, and I haven't for like 10 years. And when we're recruiting people, it just doesn't factor. It just doesn't come into it at all. I want to meet the person and talk to them. And, what are you into? Is the question really general. I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Can I quickly add?
Yeah.
So I think we were probably one of the first in the industry, so asset management, investment management industry, years ago to actually stand up an apprenticeship. It was a software engineering apprenticeship. So I think it must have been running for about 6, 7 years now. And there was no competition with degree holders. If you have a degree, you're not allowed onto it. You're a school leaver, so the age is specific, the window. So you can't have a degree and come onto an apprenticeship because that defeats the object, right? Because we want to be able to train you, to mold you, whilst you come to somewhere like this to learn the practical skills and come back into work and and do the day job. And would have like an assessment center where we assess the students. And I kid you not, a lot of the assessment is not based on technical ability, because you wouldn't necessarily have the technical ability, right, if you're coming from school, unless there were 1 or 2 people who had it. because they were just special, right? So it's your leadership skills. When you're put into groups, how do you lead? How do you put yourself forward? Like all the stuff that Katie was talking about, the softer skills in you. That's what differentiates you from others, right? And your networking, obviously. So don't be put off about that now. I mean, we started with just that one apprenticeship. Now we've got data apprenticeships, we've got actuarial apprenticeships, we've got so many apprenticeships in the company. And I think that's the future, to be honest. Even for my daughter, when she wanted to go to uni, I was thinking, actually, is it worthwhile her going to uni for 3 or 4 years? Whereas someone that maybe took an apprenticeship at the same time, like be 4 years ahead, right? In terms of skills, in terms of experience, in terms of their network, right? And their earning power. So how do you weigh? And I think apprenticeships, I think, would be the way to go, especially going to your point around the academic institutions, like the stuff that they put out is kind of obsolete in the way it's not changing with times and so on and so forth. So I think there's huge opportunities for apprenticeships across board and across industries. Now every industry, investment banks are doing it, investment management. So if it's finance that you're interested in, or technology, or whatever your Googles and all of these companies there, or every single company is doing it. So
can I just briefly violently agree with you? Whenever my mates ask me, and they're talking about their kids, they want to come and do work experience at Balfour, it's quite cool. My advice is always to people who are going into technical roles, don't go to university. I don't think it helps you, right? When we recruit grads, you know, they've got to go through the same process as someone who's coming in and doing an apprenticeship because they're not prepared for the job in university. I firmly believe, you know, coming in an apprenticeship of kind of, you know, everything that you said, I'm not going to repeat it, right? But that's totally agree, 100%.
Right. We've got 5 more minutes, so I can take another question from the room if there's any other questions in the room. Yeah, Nick.
I'd love to hear from Katie, but then from others in terms of how AI can help you develop durable skills. You've spoken a lot about how valuable they are. Heard a lot about like teaching you how to code or writing an email for you. Writing an email, I guess, is a durable skill, but I'd love to hear more about like, do you think it could help you or has it helped you?
So just to repeat the question for people online, the question was how AI can help you improve your durable skills.
If I look at how I apply AI with my apprenticeship and the sort of the portfolio building aspects of it and writing about my projects and things like that, I was actually having a conversation earlier about the fact that there's kind of a grey area around how much you should be using AI for writing your projects up and things like that, because you know it could probably do all the work for you if you really wanted it to, but then what's that teaching you and how is that going to reflect? Is it authentic? Things like that. I haven't been taught how to use like ChatGPT, for example. I kind of just played around with it. I just sort of started talking to it and seeing what it would come out with. And I very quickly realised that the more I told it, and the more I told it that I wanted, the more it gave me what I wanted. And then since then, I sort of been to like workshops with Multiverse and things like that, where they do say, you know, you're supposed to be more specific and put in what you want to get out and things like that. So you kind of teach yourself really, and it's just a matter of knowing what you want to get out of it in the first place. So in terms of trying to pick up durable skills, I think you kind of need to know what you're looking for already. So if you're looking for communication skills, then immediately you're going to be telling it that you're looking to develop communication skills, but this is how you want to do it. This is your background. This is your goal, and things like that. And it's just really a matter of playing around. I don't think there's any one way to go about learning how to use AI in that sense.
Oh, I'll add just one more thing. I think if you look out 5 years or even less, if you look at like where a lot of investment in AI is going, sure it's going into like efficiency and smaller models and like less bias, all of those kinds of things. But really the cutting edge is going towards how do you make the current models more empathetic. If you had empathetic models, where would you apply them? Like you could use them to teach softer skills, how to communicate empathetically, teach them how to interview, teach people how to interview effectively. You even go as far as to teach, like, do DEI training more effectively in a more personalized way. I think there's like really interesting use cases of AI that are coming that, like, if you just peek around the corner a little bit of like what's going to happen. Dialogue, like back and forth dialogue with AI, like 2 years away. Empathy, 3 to 5 years away, like effectively. And then apply those to like building skills, training, being more effective, unlocking potential. I think it's just an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, I think for now we're not quite there because I asked ChatGPT to write a birthday message for my colleague.
It's a few years
It
away.
was terrible.
It's a few years away.
It ruined some relationships.
I've started like writing stuff, right? My first thing I wrote was how to talk to AI. And one of the things I said in it is, I really don't like the way these things talk to me. The article's about custom prompts, right? And I've got like, call me David, use contractions. I don't want you to talk to me like your data from Star Trek. Say it online rather than I am, be informal, all those kind of things. And I think that you can instruct them currently how you want to be communicated with. But it doesn't, to your point, that's not empathy, right? It feels like a facade at the moment. And I hope that's going to change.
I don't want it. I don't want that capability. I want that to remain human. It's important.
Well, on that note, we've just run out of time. So I just want to say thank you.
There's one
Sorry,
question.
one last question.
Well, actually, it was really a follow-up from what you were saying then, which is one of the mistakes that we're making with AI as it currently stands is that we are trying to treat it like a human, and that actually we should be treating it as it is, which is a robotic interface.
It's a tool that you apply, not a replacement. And this is why I think some of the conversations around will it replace humanity, I just, again, I tend to think not, because it'll elevate like other things have. Like, again, mobile is a great example. It's created opportunity. 250 million people in India never had PCs, and then all of a sudden with mobile, they're now like carrying around supercomputers in their pockets. Like that's the kind of stuff I think that AI will actually do. And yes, of course there's fear, and of course there's like uncertainty, but I think if you look at it as how do you actually use it to create good and create opportunity, which plug for Multiverse, that's what we're trying to do. That actually changes how you think about AI and removes some of the fear and uncertainty.
Can I just briefly, it's crazy interesting you say that, right? One of the things that we've been thinking about a lot, I'm conscious I'm like the big corp guy on the stage as well, right? But naming, right? What do you call these things? Exactly. So I can't tell you what we are calling ours internally in BB because commas will murder me, but there's a whole plan around talking about it. But the hard lines for me that it felt like a name, but it wasn't a person, and that the name wasn't gendered. I have a real problem with like Alexa. Like, who decided to do that? It struck me as a really odd positioning, if you like, of the tools. But I think how you address them, how you interact with them, I don't know. I don't have an answer, right? But I think it's really interesting, that whole part of the thing. We've never been able to talk to the technology before, right? Not in the same way. Remember toy chatbots? There's been nonsense before, but these things, they feel like they have a personality, and it's difficult to know how to navigate that.
But it's because one of my...
Sorry, I'm so sorry, but we do have to wrap up, but our panelists will be around for a drink afterwards. I just wanted to say thank you very much to our panelists, really appreciate your time, and thank you to those who came in person and those who logged in online, we really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you have a good